Hello, Easy World friends. Julia Rogers Hamrick here. And the message I want to share with you is one that I probably thought of a dozen or more times over the years as I was transplanting plants from the small pots they came from the grower into the larger decorative pots that I wanted them in, or when I was planting my perennial garden and so on, they would come in a grower's pot and I would put them in the ground. And almost every time I would notice that those plants did not want to leave their pots. They did not want to leave the pots that they were used to move into the larger pots that I wanted them to be in. And so I figured out, interestingly enough, I just instinctively one day said, as I was, trying to get the pot to come out, turn the pot upside down, beading on the bottom, wiggling it, the plastic pot, squishing it and trying to get the plant to come out. And one day I just said, look, you're going to be so much happier in your new home. You want to come out and move into a more comfortable space where you have plenty of room to grow. And every time the plant would release itself from the pot with ease, and then I could plant it. First I would do what you call teasing the roots. I would sort of pull the roots apart because they would almost always be very thick and grown together. In fact, they would be, the plants themselves would be root bound or pot bound. They would be, old enough that their roots had circled and ingrown on themselves, sort of seeking more dirt or more nutrients. I'm not really sure. I believe that the roots would probably be looking for more nutrients. That's what they like the dirt for. But also roots stabilize a plant, so perhaps it was just looking to spread further. I'm not sure. But always when I would transplant these plants, they would have some way or another gotten stuck in their pots. And sometimes the roots would grow through the water holes at the bottoms of the pots so that the roots were sticking through and curled around, and you'd try to get the plant to come out of the pot and the roots were holding on, making like a hook. So, I noticed that these plants seemed to want to stay, or at least that was my imagination, that they wanted to stay where they had originally been planted, and yet they had the urge to grow. Their nature was growth. Now, I'm not saying that I was necessarily a higher intelligence than these plants, but I did have the plan. I did know the master plan. And I did know that where these plants were going, they would have an opportunity to expand and grow, and that they had run out of opportunities in their growers' pots. They would not be able to grow any further. And so as I would be coaxing them out of their pots, in my mind, I knew where they were going. Now, they did not know where they were going. At least that's what I tell myself. They didn't know where they were going, but I knew that they were going to a better situation. Not only would they be going to a place they would grow, have a chance to grow and expand, but they would be appreciated in a new way. When you're stuck at Home Depot in a mass of flats of other flowers and things, or pots and pots and pots, you're not going to get the kind of appreciation you are when you're put into my prize cobalt blue big ceramic pot and you're the showcase of the deck, or the corner of the garden. So I knew that these plants had an opportunity not only to grow more, but to be more appreciated, to bring more joy, and to fulfill what they were intended to be when they were planted by the grower. So I guess you've already figured out what I'm going for. The analogy I'm going for here is that perhaps when I was thumping on the plants, squishing their pots, beating them, and trying to get them to leave their little comfy place, they might have, if they were us, okay, let's just jump the analogy here. When we get very used to, maybe not comfortable, but used to where we are, and then something comes along and tries to uproot us and make what we had known to be our comfort zone, when that becomes uncomfortable for us, when that is made uncomfortable for us, we look at it as something's going wrong. This is bad. We've had this job we've been comfortable in for 20 years, and suddenly they are laying us off, and we're going, this is awful, this is bad, this is wrong. Well, what if when that happened, it was just because you'd outgrown your pot, or because the master gardener, that higher intelligence of you, knew that you were never going to be able to fulfill what you were created for in that setting that you were so used to, and that it was a necessary thing to have to kind of pull you out in a strong way, since you weren't probably willing to go in that gentle, easy way. I mean, sometimes when you buy plants and you turn them over, they'll just fall right out of their pot and be happy to move into their larger container or into the ground. But so many times not. And that's like us. If we're wise, we'll go, okay, I feel myself being moved. I feel the status quo shifting. And instead of panicking and going, oh, holy cow, something horrible's happening, if we would learn to absolutely trust that the higher intelligence of us, our higher power, spirit, the God-realized self of us, whatever you want to call that, knows what will cause us to thrive. And if it takes moving us out by force from something we've grown comfortable in so that we have more room to expand and grow, then that's what's going to happen. So, when we get the clue that that's going on, if we'll just take a deep breath and go, it must be time to expand. It must be time for a bigger pot. It must be time to be placed in a situation where I'm going to be able to grow, and I'm going to be able to display my brilliance in a new way. This is my time to become all that I was intended to be when the seed of me was planted. So that's pretty much the message, is that really there's always a master gardener in charge of us. And just because we don't understand why we're being pulled out of our pot, sometimes by a little bit of force, that doesn't mean that there's not a perfectly valid divine reason that if you were able to see high enough, you would see it's a blessing, and that it was indeed the only way you were ever really truly going to move into a place where you felt joy and you felt good, or at least better, after you made the transition. Because, very, very, very rarely have I ever taken a plant that was pot bound and moved it into a better container for it that it didn't thrive. It almost always, I mean, I'm trying to even remember times when things did not thrive. You know, maybe there were some failures in the perennial department because of not, completely understanding what conditions and so on. That was just a matter of me not having experience with that plant or those conditions or whatever. But the higher intelligence of you is way smarter than Julia the gardener. It knows everything about you and everything about the context in which it's about to deliver you. So when you can trust that and know that when you're being moved from one container to the next, that it is absolutely for your highest possibilities for your well-being. And indeed, if you were to stay in that smaller, more confined situation, that you would eventually just die because you weren't able to grow. And when you're not growing, you're dying. So I hope that will give you something to think about. And if you're in a situation where you're suddenly maybe faced with divorce or job loss or any kind of uprooting of your status quo, to just go, okay, I can make this much easier on myself by understanding that I'm in the process of being placed into a situation where I will be able to thrive in ways I never could before. So, I'm Julia Rogers Hambrick, and just sending love to all.